You know, we call it the Civil Rights Movement. Mm-hmm. We started off calling it the Freedom Movement because it went beyond just civil rights.
Yeah.
It was more for us that freedom, you know, the same kind of freedoms that everyone else had. We felt like it was what everybody should have,
yeah.
you know, and we weren't getting we weren't being afforded those freedoms, and so we wanted to fight really diligently to gain those freedoms.
All's my life I has to fight. All's my life hard times like bad trips like Nazareth, I'm f***ed up, homie, you f***ed up. But if God got us, then we gon' be alright. We gon' be alright. We gon' be alright.
In the middle of the 20th century, oppression and racism were challenged by courage.
We're willing to be beaten for democracy.
Leadership.
Negroes want complete equality, social, economic, and political.
And a dream.
We as a people will get to the promised land.
A crusade that galvanized a people. It unfolded in the courts and exploded on the streets. The demand for freedom and equality promised to unite the nation and threatened to tear it apart. It was the long, dramatic struggle of the Civil Rights Movement.
Well, actually, to physically get involved in the Civil Rights Movement as such, I was 17, 18. I grew up in segregated Washington, D.C. My parents were from North Carolina, South Carolina, and some summers I would go visit my relatives down there, and can remember not being allowed to use bathrooms, seeing signs that says for whites only, having to sit in the balcony of the movie theater, and in order to go to the bathroom I had to leave the theater to go to a bus station to go to the bathroom. We just couldn't use the same ones that whites. And I always felt that was so unfair. Even walking from my great aunt's house to downtown, certain neighborhoods, we couldn't walk on the sidewalk because there were homes of white people and they did not want black children walking on their sidewalks. And it was very hurtful. Mm-hmm. And I felt like something needs to be done. And then as I got older and even saw more examples of things that people would say you can't do, and those infuriated me. And I just felt like we needed to do something. The first ones were really very basic because they were campus activities. I was at Howard University, and Stokely Carmichael was at Howard University. And when he came as a freshman, I was what they used to call his campus pal. And I showed him around. I was responsible for him and other freshmen. Then he became really aware, and we began to communicate and talk about things that he was interested in doing. And one of the things was just a basic protest march. And it was a 5 and dime store, and we protested against inequality there.
Now I have a few minutes, only 5, so if you'll allow me, maybe I can say a number of things that needs to be said in this country. That needs to be said in this country. And that's what I want to talk about. Now I want to talk to black people across this country. I want to talk to black people across this country. There are 4 things we have to do. Number 1, we have to stop being ashamed of being black. We've got to stop being ashamed of being black.
The movement had really started. This was around 62, 63. And I started working at the telephone company. in Washington. And there again, there was a whole bunch of discriminatory practices that was in place. Black college graduates were working for white high school graduates because they weren't giving us the same opportunities for jobs and advancement. So Stokely, Carmichael, and SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, all found a lot of these employment issues unequal and wanted to do something about it. So I would go to work at the telephone company, then get off from lunch and join the picket line. And, you know, because it was my own time, they couldn't do anything about it, but I would picket against the people who were actually paying my salary because they were unfair. And eventually, things began to change. I had some sit-down roundtable discussions with Martin Luther King, and also had some roundtable discussions with Malcolm X, because at the same time, you know, there are those separate kind of techniques that were being used, and you know, I applauded. I felt that there was a need for all kinds of actions to fight for freedom. And so I met with Malcolm X, and we had some conversations. I did some television programming with him as well, and certainly with Dr. King. And one person who doesn't get enough credit, who was really a mentor of mine, was Dorothy Height. And Dorothy Height was the president of the National Council of Negro Women. She was also one of the designers of the March on Washington, the 1963 March on Washington. As a matter of fact, she was, I think, one of the only female who was around with Martin Luther King and Roy Wilkins and the others who actually decided that we would do this March on Washington, which she was one of my great mentors, and I really admired her, and she helped me to really develop a real sense of activism, and not just for all kinds of minorities, women, you know, blacks, you know, disabled, the whole thing.
Freedom Now movement, hear me. We are requesting all citizens to move into Washington, to go by plane, by car, bus, any way that you can get there. Walk if necessary. We are pushing for jobs, housing, desegregated schools. This is an urgent request. Please join.
The American Broadcasting Company continues its coverage of the March on Washington.
It was absolutely amazing. When I think back on it now, the coming together of so many people, and from being from Washington, you know, when I came down to the mall to see the number of people who were streaming in busloads and coming into the mall, you know, cars, and just that electricity that was being generated from all diverse people. To see that coming together of a mixture of black, white, Latino, Asian, you know, it was so uplifting to think that this amount of people believed, as I believed, that what was going on was unfair and that it was time for change. I think the popular misconception is that it was done out of hatred for white people, and that absolutely was not the motivation for the movement. the core had nothing to do with a hatred for anything. It was a love of country because we all believed in this country.
Yeah.
And we believed in what this country was built on, the foundation of this country with equal for all.
Paul and Silas, bound in jail, had no money.
A bad memory would certainly be getting slammed to the sidewalk by bullies, because they were not actual police officers, but just by bullies who were not controlled by law enforcement. They would just allow them to knock us to the ground or step on us or do whatever. So, you know, those were bad memories. My involvement in civil rights basically took on a lot of different dimensions. You know, first was the sit-ins and the protests and, you know, all of the marches that we did. And then it became more active in terms of helping to create opportunities in the South for minorities in areas that there were no opportunities before. And then down the road, it became more involved in actual presentation of issues and ways to resolve issues through the media. So, you know, it took 3 different kind of phases of activism. The whole idea of getting more African Americans involved in media so that the portrayal of African Americans would be more positive than it had been without the involvement of blacks in the media, gave me an opportunity to pursue my activism through the power of the media, because the media, as you know, is very powerful, particularly in projecting images and presenting different points of views and sides of issues and stuff like that. And without minorities behind the scenes, that wasn't happening. And so I was able to get into the behind the scenes in the media and mainstream media to be able to offer that point of view, and then to do my activism that way as opposed to on the streets. I realized, you know, I really recognized the power, that real power that the media had in doing that, and felt like I could help alleviate that. And so I decided to pursue it, and it was it turned out to be a good fit for me. Yeah. It's made me more aware of treatment of people, first off, and that it doesn't matter what color you are. The whole thing is that you have to be fair and equitable in your treatment of people, other people. And so, if you know, I think the movement molded that in me, but it also molded it gave me a sense of self and sense of knowing that I have worth, and that I should then encourage everybody, other people, to know and have that sense of worth, self-worth, to know that whether their skin's black, white, yellow, green, whether they're poor, it doesn't matter, rich, it doesn't matter, poorly educated, well-educated, you know, you have value, you have worth. And so it has shaped my life, and the movement actually helped shape my life, because when you see and you experience how people try to drag you down and beat you up and take away, your liberties and freedoms, when you know how that feels, you're not going to want to do that to anybody else.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's, I believe that's why and how the media has shaped my life.
Around you have grown and accepted that soon you'll be drenched to the bone.
I know that it is up to us, and as an individual, to take it upon ourselves to make changes in ourselves, in our communities, in our schools. I think it is a personal responsibility for each of us to be able to help eradicate hate, discrimination, injustice, socioeconomic ills. We all have a role to play. And I don't care if you are living in a project or up in a mansion. It doesn't matter. It's up to each of us to take a part, whether it's a church, a school, or a civic organization, a community, sorority, fraternity, whatever. We all have got to come together and decide that this is something that we want to do and do it. And we can. I believe we can as individuals. I firmly believe in the heart of people and that there is inherently good in the majority of people.
The line it is drawn and the curse it is cast. The slowest one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be